With the wide receiver free agent market taking a hit after the franchise tags, there are two potential trades everyone's talking about. Well, what's happening, Jets fans? This is GreenBean back with another video, and we're going to get into it. I was scouring Twitter and Jetnation the last 24 hours, and it is all abuzz with a few trade offers. Well, maybe not offers, two trade scenarios that everybody's kind of freaking out about a little bit. So we're going to get into those. Before we do, I want to remind you of a couple things. One is, if you're digging the content, if you like hanging out here, go ahead and like this video with the little thumbs up. And the best thing you can do for the channel is to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It means the world. It helps me out. And you'll be reminded of all the great stuff that we put out here on Greenbeanjetsfan's YouTube page. Additionally, I want to give you something a little bit different. I want to tell you guys, I'm putting a link in the top of the description to an app that I use constantly. I've used it for years. I saved literally $2,000 since I've been using it. And it's a gas app called Get Upside. It's right there. All you got to do is click the link and use my promo code. We both get a benefit. All you do is engage this app every time that you buy gas. It gives you 5, 10, 20 cents off per gallon at the gas station that you're at. And then you collect the money later on Amazon cards or whatever you want to do. I usually use Amazon, but it helps. And with the gas prices being what they are, guys, we could all benefit if we do this, and I'm giving it to you. Again, I've been using it for years. It's one of my favorite apps, if not my favorite app. So the information is right there. And if you're looking for more exclusive Green Bean content and you'd like to help the channel, my Patreon is the absolute best way to do that. We do weekly get-togethers on Discord and through Zoom. We do positional breakdown get-togethers. We watch classic Jets games. Plus, you get early releases and all sorts of great stuff. That is right in the link in the description as well. So, guys, we got trading to talk about. Now, there's a lot of potential trade scenarios that we could talk about. But we're going to talk about these two that I see kind of rising to the surface. One is trading with the Seattle Seahawks again, who we know just made a blockbuster trade to get rid of Russell Wilson, who it's just going to be so weird to see him in a different uniform. Russell Wilson is going down to the Denver Broncos, and they got a whole bunch of picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, Noah Fant, Drew Lock, Shelby, the defensive lineman. So Seattle, I think, did quite well. They probably learned a little bit from their trade with the Jets on what value actually looks like, and I think they did pretty well. But they now have the look of a team that's probably going through somewhat of a rebuild. It may be not a full rebuild, but at least push and reset to some degree. Their quarterback is gone. They're acquiring draft capital. They got rid of a whole bunch of cap obligations, and they're still kind of up against the cap. And they have a guy on their team named DK Metcalf, who, if you remember correctly, it's funny now that we're going through the combine buzz, everybody talking about Sauce Gardner or they don't like Treylon Burks. One of the things that happened a couple years ago was that DK Metcalf had himself a good combine except for one drill. DK Metcalf was being talked about in the top half of the first round, top 10 for a little while there. He was considered potentially a top 10 pick. He had a terrible 3-cone drill where he didn't look as agile as a lot of teams are wanting out of their wide receiver, and they looked at him as basically a one-trick pony, a straight line receiver, and he dropped all the way from the top 10 to the bottom of the second round. And we all know how his career's been going. It looks like he just might be pretty good at this wide receiver thing in the NFL. But he's about to cost a whole bunch of money for the Seattle Seahawks. I want to tell you, his projected contract, if all things continue on the trajectory that he's been on, is 4 years, $84 million, which breaks down to just about $21 million per year. So that's what we're looking at. For this year, though, Seattle might be able to get some value because he only costs $4 million. $4,234,000 for this particular year. So you're going to get DK Metcalf for cheap. Let's just call it what it is, for cheap. So you can get DK Metcalf. Now, there is a rumored value for him right now. People are talking about trading the Jets' number 10 overall pick for DK Metcalf. That's an expensive pick. Again, he was talked about as a top 10 pick. He was a late second round pick, and he's played in the NFL for a few years, and he's probably letting everybody know I should have been a top 10 pick or at least a first rounder, right? So do you want to give up the 10th overall pick for a wide receiver in the first place? Guys are talking about Garrett Wilson. We're talking about Treylon Burks. Hell, now we're even talking about Alec Pierce. So we're talking about all kinds of guys. But if you want something a little bit more of a sure thing, maybe you just use that pick. If you were going to use it on a wide receiver, you go get DK Metcalf and you bring him in for almost guaranteed production. You give Zach Wilson a reliable weapon where a rookie is going to have the whole learning curve and everything else. So it's how do you see it? Now, here's the downside. Obviously, like I just said, you're going to get him this year for cheap. But DK Metcalf is going to want that $21 million. Now, maybe it's not exactly that high. That's PFF's projection. Maybe it's not that high, but it's going to be up there. It's going to be from the 18 up range. So do you want to use your number 10 overall pick when you could use it on a rookie and get the 5 years for super cheap? Do you want to use that number 10 overall pick for guaranteed production, but obviously is going to be putting you in somewhat of a cap situation later? It's an interesting discussion. Would you do it? Let me know in the comments. Maybe you can tell Seattle, we'll give you 10 overall for DK Metcalf and one of these brand new shiny second round picks that you got from the Denver Broncos. Maybe it's worth jumping up from 38 or whatever it might be all the way up to 10 for DK Metcalf. Now we're talking, okay, we're getting a little bit better. Maybe that's a scenario that we could see take place. Would you do it? Are you trading the number 10 overall pick for DK Metcalf and his $84 million contract next year? Would you do it for 1 year? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Now, the second one is interesting. We've been talking about this one for a little while, but the compensation has been changing. And we're going to talk about the high compensation that I saw floating around Twitter this week. The rumor is that the Jets might consider trading for Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Amari Cooper for pick 38 in this year's draft and 69 in this year's draft. So a second and a third, a very high second round pick and a very high third round pick to go out and grab Amari Cooper and pay him $20 million a year. Now, Amari Cooper is under contract for 3 more years, but the team can get out of it, if I have this correctly, after the 2022 season. So you could get off the hook, but do you want to give up 2 of your 5 premium assets for a wide receiver who would be a 1-year rental in that scenario? You got to either have him as a 1-year rental, you got to have him as a $20 million receiver for the next couple of years, or you have to figure out a way to renegotiate with this guy and let him know, hey, nobody's going to pay you $20 million on the open market. They're just going to cut you and you're going to lose it. We'll give you 17.5 kind of a thing for 4 years, blah, 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 blah. Maybe that happens. Let's look at these guys' production. Now, Amari Cooper has had 5 1,000-yard seasons. He's 27 years old. He's been in the league for 7 years, and 5 of those have been 1,000-yard seasons. Last year, he had 103 targets, 68 receptions for 865 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So last year was not one of these 1,000-yard seasons, but we know with Gallup and CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz and Ezekiel Elliott in the mix, his production has dipped a little bit, probably because they don't need his production to be what it was. He's still clearly a number 1 wide receiver, but that's what we're looking at with Amari Cooper. He also had 1 fumble and 3 drops last year. So that's just something to consider. 3 drops is nothing. You don't want to see any drops, but Corey Davis had 8 himself. So it's a little bit better. It's an upgrade, right? Now, DK Metcalf has been in the league for, this will be his 4th year. The good news with him is he has played just about every game in his whole career. He played all 17 games last year. That would be new for the Jets. He had 129 targets, 75 receptions for 967 yards. DK Metcalf has only had 1 1,000-yard season, but he had 967. That's 1,000 yards where I come from. He also had 12 touchdowns, 1 fumble, and 4 drops. So he also had 1,300 yards the year before, so he did have that 1,000-yard season in 2020 with another 10 touchdowns. So in the last 2 years, he's given the Seattle Seahawks 22 touchdowns. Have we even ever seen anybody like that? So bringing one of these guys on clearly is going to be an upgrade. It's all about the compensation. Now, you can look at the Buffalo Bills. When they just committed and went and got Diggs, they overpaid a little bit in many people's eyes, but his production has been undeniable. His being an asset for Josh Allen is also undeniable. He changed the whole offense. So maybe bringing in a DK Metcalf or an Amari Cooper could do the same thing for Zach Wilson. Hey, who knows? It's all about the compensation. Number one, they're both going to cost about $20 million. DK Metcalf, you do get the 1 year at $4 million, but they're both going to cost somewhere around $20 million bucks. And you're giving away either a top 10 first round pick or a top 5 second and a top 5 third for Amari Cooper. So what say you, Jet Nation? Let me know in the comments. I'm dying to hear your thoughts. It's picking up out there with trades. We see Russell Wilson, we see Carson Wentz, we see Amari or Aaron Rodgers just staying put. All kinds of crazy stuff going on. What say you about the New York Jets going out there and grabbing a true number 1 wide receiver for our boy Zach Wilson? I can't wait to talk to you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe and consider that Gas app, man. It's real. I use it all the time. I hope you can get some benefit out of it. With all that said, have a delightful day and go Jets!